Our breaking news this morning, the president of Ukraine says he is ready to talk with President Trump and he's ready to reset his country's relationship with the U.S.
Zelensky sat down for his first one-on-one interview since the Senate acquitted President Trump. Speaking with our Christian Amanpour, Zelensky says the impeachment process hurt his ability to secure the U.S. aid on which his country depends. CNN's chief international anchor, Christian Amanpour, joining us now live from Munich. Hi there, Christian. A very interesting interview. And this is a man, a president, who unwittingly got caught up in the impeachment scandal just months after he was elected in that landslide victory. And he made it clear in this interview with you today that he wants to start over, start from scratch with the United States and get this visit to the White House.
That's exactly right. And Amra, this is an important interview because it's his first ever sit down with international television, American television, and everybody's wanted to hear from him because of the way he's been, and his country have been swept up into the domestic crisis in the United States. He's also, as you know, got a story very similar to President Trump's in that it's an unusual story for a politician and a world leader. President Trump, businessman and former, reality celebrity TV show, and President Zelensky, also a comedian who was part of a show that was highly successful called Servant of the People. Now he finds himself, in this dramatic, heart of the world kind of strategic situation. And I first asked him about how it felt being caught up in all of this, and his ironic side came out, shall we say. Here's what he told me.
Now I'm very popular in USA. But I didn't want to find such way. But, but if this way will help Ukraine, I'm ready for next call with Mr. Trump.
So, he's making light, but he's also very, very serious because he has used his ability, because he's very charismatic, as you know, he's got a really good way of communicating. He's done that throughout his career as an actor and as a performer. And now he knows that the most serious thing facing him and his country is this war in the eastern part of Ukraine because the Russians in 2014 intervened, the little green man, remember? And they intervened and it is still occupied. He called it temporarily occupied, and he also said, please don't think that this is a war in Ukraine, it is a war in Europe, and it is a strategic cause that affects the United States as well. So he was very, very clear that he wanted to thread the needle very carefully between, walking this delicate balance between what happened with impeachment and the necessity of having a good relationship with President Trump and the United States, their strongest backers after all. Then I asked him about corruption. And as everybody knows, Ukraine has been accused of being highly corrupt, and he pushed back. I quoted him something that President Trump had said about him, and he pushed back on that and said it's a whole new day now regarding corruption in Ukraine. Here's what he said. Ukraine has been labeled one of the most corrupt countries in the world. That is one of the reputational damages to your country in the wake of all of this. And recently, really recently, in November, around Thanksgiving, President Trump told Fox News, why should we give money to a country that's known corrupt? It's a very corrupt country. I love the people in Ukraine. I know Ukrainian people, they're great people, but it's known as being the third most corrupt country in the world.
That's not
true.
That's not true. When I had a meeting with Mr. President Trump, and he said about that, he said that in previous years it was so corrupted country, Ukraine. I told him very honestly, and I was very open with him. I told him that we fight with corruption, we fight with this, fight each day. But please stop to say that Ukraine is a corrupted country, but because from now it's not truth. We want to change this image.
So you can see he's being absolutely determined there to say they want to start a new page in relations with the rest of the world. Obviously, they want to fight corruption in their own country. Remember, he's a young man. He came unconventionally towards politics and to becoming president. He won 73% of the second round of voting. It's a huge mandate from the people. And there was a distinguished panel of bipartisan senators listening to him speak, listening to the interview, and then also talking when it came to the sort of Q&A part, Republican and Democrat, reaffirming America's strong support for Ukraine and saying that they've all agreed, because they visited him in Kiev, his capital, they all agreed that they must get beyond impeachment and get down to the serious business of protecting Ukraine from the Russian interference. Back to you.
Very delicate balance he had to strike. There's one interesting part there where he said, I think it really encapsulates the job he had, where he said, I say not as I want, but as Ukraine needs. And of course, he knows the needs of the people there across the eastern part of his country. Christian Amanpour for us there in Munich. Thank you. Let's go now to West Palm Beach. Sarah Westwood is covering the president. He visits Mar-a-Lago this weekend. Sarah, any reaction from the president or his team on the Zelensky comments?
Well, Victor, we haven't yet heard from President Trump or the White House about what Zelensky said. We have asked, but clearly what we heard there from Ukrainian President Zelensky was really his desire to reboot U.S.-Ukraine relationships. He wants to define that relationship with President Trump outside the context of impeachment. That's really all that's been discussed about U.S.-Ukraine ties. Obviously, the U.S., a huge backer of Ukraine, especially in terms of military support. So that is a valuable relationship, particularly for President Zelensky. We heard him express confidence that that White House meeting that President Trump allegedly held over his head in the events that led up to impeachment would still happen. That's something that Zelensky had sought to affirm his legitimacy when he was a new president at the time that his now infamous conversation with President Trump took place. Zelensky said, though, that the ball is now in America's court. Take a listen.
The last time that I met the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, we talked about that, and I said I would very much like that my visit to the United States would be something special for both countries, with an important and substantive outcome and result for both countries, something beneficial for both countries. I want to come and start it from scratch. Our relations, to agree on some contracts, to sign some arrangements, to agree on the strategic things, investments. Let's prepare the package of the documents and arrange the meeting. So the ball is in the courtyard of the United States of America. But we are always happy to see everyone in Ukraine, so I'm ready to invite President Trump to come to Kiev.
Now, for President Trump, every future interaction with Ukrainian President Zelensky is likely to be scrutinized, so that is probably going to factor into how the White House proceeds from here in terms of U.S.-Ukraine relations. That's going to be a relationship that is going to be difficult for President Trump to navigate in the post-impeachment era. Now, we heard Christian Amanpour ask Zelensky several times about impeachment. He seemed to not want to talk about the drama going on in U.S. politics. Really, he wants to chart a new path forward for Ukraine. He has been craving that legitimacy on the world stage, and so we saw him also rebuke President Trump's characterization of Ukraine as a sort of corrupt, lawless place. That's something that Zelensky several times sought to correct the record on in that interview, Imran. Victor.
All right, Sarah Westwood for us there in West Palm Beach. Thanks so much.